kind of going back to the investment in infrastructure and logistics, every move is actually very sensitive and has like geopolitics meaning behind that. For example, the high-speed railway from Hanoi to Kunming kind of hint that we want to keep good relationship with China. But then the recent Funan canal in Cambodia also heating up some kind of relationship between us and Cambodia. Hanoi clearly doesn't like that. So I think building more island is kind of a hedge for inserting our power, inserting our voice into the region, especially the sea.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave. Did you know that you can get a free business class trip to Japan every year with Haymax AI? Haymax is a rewards app where 500 brands like Apple, Shopee, Amazon, Agoda, and even banks reward you for your loyalty by contributing towards your dream vacation. Through the Haymax app, every transaction you make earns you Max Miles, which you can redeem for free travel at more than 25 airline and hotel partners. Sign up at haymax.ai now to get a 1,000 Max Miles head start. Turn your daily transactions into dream vacations. Your business can also leverage the highly cost-efficient and desirable loyalty currency called Max Miles that has no expiry, no fees, and instantly one-to-one transferable to 24 airlines and hotels to acquire new customers and drive repeat sales with no integration required. Reach out to Joe at haymax.ai and mention Brave to uplevel your rewards game and reduce your cost.
Morning, Valerie.
Good morning, Jeremy.
I heard that you've been traveling quite a bit.
Yeah, I just got back after a pretty long business trip. The main purpose is helping portfolio companies. So I've been traveling to several countries in North Asia and the US as well. Also want to mainly educate the foreign investor on Vietnam because I think the recent foreign investor, mostly from like South Asia, are very conservative right now. And their action right now is to not invest further in Vietnam and wait for what's coming next. And our startups who are quickly growing, some of them don't want to wait for bear market to be over, and they really want to fundraise right now, and they want to continuously growing. So hands-on VC, I want to find another channels to help my portfolio companies and the founders to keep going and finding another source of capital and not relying too much on just South Asian investor. Because yeah, I think most South Asian investors are very hesitant on Vietnam right now, and they are kind of waiting for the moment of stability to come. But I'm still very bullish that the worst like volatile period is over, and now we are moving on to the more like very stable period, and this is the time to invest. But yeah, I think most of the South Asian investors are very careful right now, and they don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we previously were discussing some of these factors, right? Let's dive into it. So I think one of the big factors, of course, was the bank rescue of Saigon Bank. I'm going to share my screen here, but it looks like there's a recent article that just came out about how the Vietnam Central Bank has lent another $1.2 billion to Saigon Joint Stock Commercial Bank over the past 2 months. So now the total 24.5 billion, which is the equivalent of 6% of Vietnam's GDP, right? What are your thoughts, Valerie?
Yeah, I think the risk of a bank run is completely eliminated, even though the trial is still being ongoing and some more arrest warrants have been done. But it's really showing that the government wants to treat this corruption at the root level, but they will not let a bank run happen, and they try everything they can to make sure that SCB is in safe hands. So
Yeah.
so I think the message is stability first.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think it's good to hear because you and I were kind of like the first few people to really talk about this quite early in the process. And then now it feels the situation has stabilized, but I think that news is still getting priced into the market now finally. So it's quite interesting. Whereas I think there's a difference between the macro investor view and then what's happening on the ground, which is the bank run has stopped from a retail perspective as well.
Yeah, not only just that, we elected a new president, and it's much expected that Mr. Tô Lâm is the new president because he was the main conductor behind all the anti-corruption campaign. So he was previously Minister of Public Security, and his biggest agenda is still bringing stability and transparency to the government before we move forward with economic development. So now we have the new president in Vietnam. I think brighter picture and kind of stability is coming. So I think that's another very positive news for Vietnam. And that's what a lot of investors haven't seen.
Yeah, I think this is news for a lot of people, right? Which is that there's a new president, right? So there's quite a few vacancies from the anti-corruption campaign. Now Tô Lâm has been there, and here he is. So in the secret ballot, 472 of 473 deputies voted in favor of his nomination, and he's been a public security minister and joined the Politburo in 2021. So yeah, tell us more about him because a lot of people don't know who he is, right?
Actually, I don't know so much about him. I just know that he's the most powerful figure in kind of public security minister. He had a brief scandal before because he was in London eating at one of the most expensive restaurants in the world, the Salt Bay restaurant, and he was spotted eating gold flake or something. That was a few years ago, and that caused like a big debate that, oh, how can a public governor dine in such expensive restaurant and be eating gold flake? So that was only his minor scandal. But before that, he was very low-key person. I don't know the video of him eating at that restaurant and the gold flake was still around. I'm pretty sure it's already deleted from the media.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the global media is still around. I definitely saw that video. It
Yeah.
was during the COVID period, right? And a lot of people were still staying home, not necessarily because they had to, but out of precautions.
Yeah, and also average meal in that kind of restaurant and eating gold is 10 or 20 times more expensive than his salary. So it raised a lot of questions and doubt from the public. But yeah, I think that incident was completely erased from the media.
Yeah. So I think I went to go and quickly Google this for you, but the price of gold steak is 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the short video, he was like doing that, and yeah,
I mean, it doesn't look tasty at all, I'll say. You know, she's famous for the salt sprinkling and then he bounces off his forearm, right? So I'm like, does he
Yeah.
always work out that one arm in the gym just to make sure that he has a nice muscle? Otherwise, it does. I didn't see this in my hand. I don't think people pay for my hand to sprinkle salt like this.
yeah, I don't know.
So yeah, so do you think that this guy will bring in more stability, right? I think stability is in two ways. One is that the post has been filled, that's one, and then two is who he is. How about the other roles? I know we had multiple vacancies as well for quite some time.
Other roles are also filled, but I think the main attention is Mr. Tô Lâm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And would someone like him, I mean, how does it work? Do they get promoted after this?
He's already at the top. We are waiting General Assembly Chair, Mr. Chuck. He's supposed to step down in the next term, but that's still a little bit of unknown here, whether he's staying or he will stay for another term. I don't think he's supposed to stay for another term. One, because they can only stay for 2 terms. And secondly, he's also older. So we need a stronger person. Yeah. Just looking at Mr. Biden, I think sometimes his health, we can clearly see he's having some trouble with his health because of the age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Biden is 81 years old, right? So I think in the US election, it's already a factor in his re-election odds and campaign. Whereas
Yeah.
Donald Trump is 77 years old, which is 4 years younger, not a huge difference. And then today, Barack Obama is 62 years old. So yeah, quite an interesting set of ages as well. So I think we'll also talk about the other issues. We talked about power has been an issue for Vietnam as well. How are things now on the power front?
Yeah, talking about power supply has not really improved. And very funny that EVN, which is the state-owned enterprise that monopolize the power supply in Vietnam, sent a message to consumer that they should consume less power and encourage people to save more electricity. They also sent a message to a lot of factories in the north who are consuming the most power, including Foxconn, that they should reduce the power consumption by at least 30% to prevent further power shortage that happened last year. And the linkage between north and south hydropower is still oncoming, so it's not complete yet. But the central and north should be done this year, so that will help a lot of power shortage burden phase out. In the meantime, the government is importing a lot of coal to kind of balance out the shortage. Coal does emit a lot of carbon emission, not a lot of option right now because we are so hustling to compete with India, to compete with Indonesia, to get all the benefit from supply chain diversification. So we have little choice right now. We have to compete. We have to hustle. And we also giving tax bracket, tax reduction to this manufacturing chip company moving to Vietnam. So in order to not lose this battle, we are importing more coal.
Yeah. I mean, I just pulled it up,
Yeah.
the chart, right? So it looks like there's an all-time high
Yeah.
in coal generation, but also an
Yeah.
all-time high in fossil fuel emissions during this time period. It's
Yeah.
interesting, like you say, that's very export-driven, the lead market on Vietnam. And then coal was going down and now it's going up, especially. There's a specific cyclical nature to it. And then imports have been going up. So really interesting set of charts here.
Yeah, because we have to compete. Imagine if Foxconn keep being told like you have to reduce power consumption. We would lose them to India or Indonesia or Malaysia. There's so many so many competitors.
Yeah, go somewhere else that still has enough power, right? Yeah, I think this is actually the central quandary for a lot of the green investment gap in Southeast Asia. It's like at one level, it's the fundamentals of electricity gap. There isn't enough electricity for each individual human and the potential of who they can become as a productive worker in a factory or an office using computers and stuff like that. So there's an electricity gap. And then secondly, is like the mix of it, how much of it is green versus coal versus oil. So I think it's really hard for this to be resolved well. I think another thing we've been talking about is also the travel. So there's a new article that came up, which is about the travel prices in Vietnam. Let me just pull up an article here. It says that the prices for Vietnam's domestic flights keep going up. Vietjet is due to high fuel costs and a shortage of plane, and it has gone up by 25% year on year. So yeah, could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is actually a critical issue because I was looking at flight ticket for my family, and it's from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi, and it's outrageous that direct flight from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi is more expensive versus if you do layover in Thailand, like any city in Thailand. Bangkok, Phuket, and like from Ho Chi Minh to Thailand, and then from Thailand to Hanoi, it's cheaper than you go directly from Ho Chi Minh City to Hanoi. Yeah, during the peak season earlier this year, like April 30 and May 1st, that's the peak travel season for earlier in the year for Vietnamese because they have a long holiday. A lot of people actually opt in to either travel internationally or book the flight to layover in Thailand because it's so much cheaper. And the airlines, not just Vietjet, but also Vietnam Airlines, got a lot of, criticism for not being able to control the fuel price. And there was a big issue that in the government meeting, the congressman was like talking about it as well. He really want the airline to stabilize the price.
Yeah, not an easy process. I mean, I think prices in general have gone up. I mean, I think a lot of airlines had the same issue, I would say, because pandemic, that's one. Then a lot of people storing their plane and then fuel prices going up. But it's interesting because I think there are two types of airlines, right? There's one type of airline that's doing well. I think especially the hubs, right? You look at your top airlines in the US, at Singapore Airlines, they seem to be very well. And I think a lot of like domestic and local airlines are not doing so well. Could you share more about Vietjet versus Vietnam Airlines? What's the difference between these two airlines?
Yeah, so Vietjet is the budget airline and it's mostly privately owned. And it used to be known as a bikini airline because when it was first launched, the CEO, who is like the most famous female entrepreneur in Vietnam, she has a very notorious campaign that all the flight attendants will wear bikini. Yeah, that's why the airline became super famous. But over time, like it has become the most effective airline in terms of cost. For the most part, if you fly international, Vietjet won't have delay. If you fly domestic, it will always have delay though. So Vietjet is kind of number one budget airline in Vietnam. And it used to be known as the Bikini Airline. Vietnam Airline is the national airline, mostly state-owned. You can think of it as like Singapore Airline, mostly state-owned and not a budget airline. But of course, they won't be allowed to have anything like bikini flight attendants because they are national airline.
When you compare Vietjet versus Vietnam Airlines, how do you make a choice between those two as a Vietnamese person?
Having flown in both, I prefer Vietnam Airlines, of course, because the seats are more comfortable. And Vietnam Airlines doesn't have delay, especially for domestic flight. It never have delay, very rarely. Vietjet, if you fly domestic, it will always have delay. Yeah, that's what I don't like about the airline. If you fly international and you want to save money, I would choose Vietjet because international flight, Vietjet is quite on top of their game. Yeah, so don't have delays.
Interesting. I mean, I've flown both as well, but I think when I was going through, I wasn't paying attention. So I was just like, just took my
Yeah,
flight and moved on with life. So it's interesting to see that there's a lot of comparison between those two. And now I know I probably want to fly Vietnam Airlines.
the flight attendants in Vietjet won't wear bikini anymore. They stopped that campaign.
I did say that I want to fly Vietjet because of that.
Yeah, that was like a long time ago.
I like how you
Yeah.
just like basically had to say, Jeremy, clearly you chose Vietnam Airlines because Vietjet doesn't have it anymore. Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, so there's a lot of other news as well. I think the big one as well is that there's also Vietnam is boosting its durian exports to China. I didn't know Vietnamese had durian.
I think we talk about this. We used to not have, but recently a lot of farmers changed their crops to durian because durian has higher order value, a higher price, so more profit to them. So a lot of them swap to durian. And now that we are officially a recognized partner, trading partner with China in terms of durian, compete head to head with Thailand. But that's why you
What-
didn't know. Yeah,
mean,
a lot
I
of them
actually don't
switched like a few years ago.
So it's interesting because I never really thought that the Vietnamese eat durian. So I mean, obviously it's quite a bit, but I don't really see like it's a very popular fruit, or I just not hang out around.
No, it's very popular. And it's a
And-
type of food that most, if you get it, you will love it and you are so addicted to durian. You don't get it, the smell of it alone can, I don't know, scare you. Like the thought of the durian smell can scare you. But once you are addicted, you keep wanting to have more.
I do like durian. So do you like durian, Valerie?
Yeah, I love durian.
Okay, deal. Looks like
Yeah.
we need to do a durian party next time in Vietnam because I've had Malaysian durian. I'm gonna say that Thai durian ain't so good. I know, cancel me for that. But compared to Malaysian durian, I think the style is different, right? I think the Thai prefer their durian to be less ripe, right? So I think it's a different flavor profile. How about the Vietnamese durian? Is it more ripe or less ripe?
More ripe, but we don't have the Musang King type. It's harder to grow the Musang King type. Yeah.
Okay, I'm still willing to try. Okay, next time I'm in Vietnam, you have to take me out, and then we have
Sure.
to go to see. Now I feel like I've got to compare. We can do like a stack rank. Who has the best durian in Southeast Asia? Oh, that's interesting actually as well. Now I feel like there's a future topic which is like we should compare Thai versus Vietnam versus Malaysia durian. What's it? Industrial policy / agriculture. I don't know, productivity comparison.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And then just talking about other stuff as well, there's a new article that came out that Vietnam is like building a lot more islands in South China Sea. So Vietnam has created as much new land in the previous 2 years combined. So in other words, over the past year, Vietnam has created 200 new hectares of land compared to previously 163 and 140 hectares. And so during the South China Sea, more than 3 trillion worth of trade passed through this. And of course, they're competing against between China, Brunei, Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnam for the Spratly Islands.
Yeah, interesting news. I actually didn't know that we are building more island, but it's kind of going back to the investment in infrastructure and logistics. Every move is actually very sensitive and has like geopolitics meaning behind that. For example, the high-speed railway from Hanoi to Kunming kind of hint that we want to keep good relationship with China. But then the recent Funan in Cambodia also heating up some kind of relationship between us and Cambodia. Hanoi clearly doesn't like that. So I think building more island is kind of a hedge for inserting our power, inserting our voice into the region, especially the sea. I know the international community call it South China Sea. As a Vietnamese, we are not allowed to call it South China Sea. We were taught to call it East Sea. So we keep reminding that this is not China. We cannot rely on China, and this island belongs to Vietnam. So I think this is a geopolitics insurance that we have more presence in its sea, and this is not South China Sea.
Yeah, I think it's a big topic for sure. And I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to be resolved anytime soon. I think that recently, obviously, the Philippines and China have had some conflict. The Philippines president was at the Shangri-La dialogue in Singapore, and he basically kind of like put a speech because this is a forum for all the defense ministers from the US, from China, and a lot of other folks were there as well. And I think the two big topics from everybody's perspective was, of course, one is the Ukraine dynamic in Europe. The Ukrainian president Zelensky also flew in to talk about that. But the other big topic was, I think, China and it comes down to two parts, right? 2A, 2B, 2A being South China Sea, Taiwan. Those were kind of like the topics that were for discussion for sure. And I think Philippines was basically putting a very strong and drew kind of a line saying, hey, this is what we care about.
I think this is a insurance hedging that if a war happens, yeah, we have more military presence.
Yeah, I think it's not an easy debate. And I think it's not just China and everyone else, right? Also, everyone has competing claims with each other as well, right? Like, kind of like a very hard negotiation path as well. But talking about kind of like tough times and conflict, I was just reading the Vietnamese Cinderella story, and it's quite different from the Cinderella story that my daughter likes to watch on Disney. Should we talk about it, Valerie?
Yeah, it's interesting. You can brief the story, but I didn't really think about that's like a Cinderella Vietnamese version until like when you mentioned it. I think it's a lot more violence and brutal to comparing to the Western version.
Yeah. Let me try to summarize this, and I want to give thanks to Reddit and Oi Vietnam for sourcing this. Story is, yeah, classic story. There's two stepsisters, right? Kind of makes sense. And then Tom lives with a sister, Kam. How do I pronounce the name? Kam, yeah, Kam. Tam and Kam, right? And then there's a stepmother who's evil. And then Kam is lazy. And then obviously Tam is hardworking. And then there is a fairy that helps like advise Tam similar. And then one day the king announces a festival where the prince can be. And then she gets kind of like from the genie or the fairy, nice clothes, slippers, carriage. And she, similarly to the normal Cinderella, I guess, she also falls in love with the prince. They fall in love with each other. She leaves behind a shoe. And then it turns out that they look for her and they find her because of the shoe. So this is actually all kind of like very similar, right? And then this is the part that kind of like gets very different from my perspective. So the story of Cinderella ends in Disney here, which is happily ever after. But here she comes back to the home, and then her stepmother devises a plan to kill Tam, Cinderella, and then chops down the tree that she's in, and then she falls into a pond and drowns. And then the stepsister goes to the palace to replace as a wife. And then she's reincarnated as a bird. And then the prince falls in love with the reincarnated soul, I guess, of the bird. And then her stepsister kills the bird, which is the reincarnated Tam. And then after that, she's reincarnated as a tree who falls in love with the prince again. And then they cut down the tree again. It's the reincarnated soul. And then she's reincarnated from the tree into another, I guess, a human girl again. And then after that, the prince sees her and falls in love with her again. And then the king wanted to put the stepsister and the stepmother to death, but then they pardoned them. And then the stepsister couldn't leave things alone. So she said, hey, how do you stay so beautiful and through all the reincarnations? And then Cinderella basically says, hey, bathing every day in boiling water helps me stay beautiful, and I'll be happy to help you if you want. And then she pours boiling water over the stepsister who dies. And then she takes the stepsister's flesh, puts it in a jar and pickles it, and then sends the pickled meat to the stepmother. And the stepmother was happily eating it. And then after that, a bird comes in and says, hey, wow, look at this, a mother eating her daughter. Please give me some. And then the stepmother says, no, you're wrong. This pickle's from my daughter. It's from the palace. And then she keeps eating. And then at the bottom of the jar, she realizes it's the skull of her daughter. And then the stepmother basically dies from sadness. So that's the ending of the Vietnamese Cinderella.
That is true. And that's kind of the story fairy tale that we grew up on. And now thinking of it, I feel like it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
Too many killing each other in between and very violent. For it to be a fairy tale for children.
Yeah. But you heard the story
Yeah,
from your parents.
many times. Yeah.
Wait, so what were you like? So you're in bed and then she's reading you the story. Aren't you scared by the story, or did you feel like it was a normal story?
We even were taught the story in school as well.
Wow.
Yeah, in like first grade and second grade.
Wow. So you're not scared at all. So you're just
Yeah.
like, very normal story.
What did I know back then, right? That was the story that I was told. So
Yeah.
thinking back, I feel like it make me tougher. Yeah, but
Tough.
yeah, it's a bit scary. I don't know if I want to tell this story to my future daughter.
You're getting soft. You're too westernized, Valerie. You need to stay strong. This is how the Vietnamese have stayed an independent country for hundreds of years. No, I think it's
Yeah.
interesting, right? Because it's like the first third of the story is exactly the same as Cinderella, right? And the second third of the story is the fact that there's the reincarnation story where Cinderella gets killed multiple times, but she keeps coming back. So there's the karma or the rebirth story, which is very Buddhist, right? And then the last third of it is the justice component.
Yeah, but even the justice part, it could be like less brutal, I feel. Yeah.
I mean, I think you can argue it's justified, right? Because she was killed multiple times while she was reincarnated to multiple bodies, right? As a bird, as a tree. And I guess technically, the stepsister, the stepmother also got reincarnated as well, I'm sure.
It didn't mention the stepmother. Yeah, I think only the sister.
I mean, I'm sure they'll be reincarnated, right? I mean, maybe as an insect.
That was not mentioned. That
That's
was
not
not
mentioned. I guess it's implied. This is my doubt asking. Theologically, everybody goes through the wheel of rebirth, right? Any other children's stories?
I think another fairy tale kind of famous to all Vietnamese child is the fairy tale of Hang Dong. So he was born and not able to talk or walk for 3 years straight. And then one day suddenly when the foreign invader came, he became like, he ate something. I forgot exactly, but he became a very powerful hero and saved the whole village from the foreign. That's another, yeah, it's called Hang Dong.
Okay. Send the link over and
Yeah,
then we'll
like-
plug it in.
Yeah, growing really fast in a very short amount of time to defeat the invader.
Interesting. Never heard of this one. This sounds very militaristic, but it sounds, like a normal fairy tale.
Yeah, but before the invader came, he cannot walk or cannot talk for years.
Ah, I think you can really see the morality behind that activity.
Yeah.
War makes
Yeah.
a man out of you. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Awesome. On that note, thank you so much, Valerie, for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.